Our group was assigned to portray Steinbeck's views of the southern part of the United States.
Steinbeck's views of the South were very negative even before he traveled there.
For example, a quote on page 227 said, "When I started this narrative, I knew that sooner or later I would have to have a go at Texas, and I dreaded it."
His views did not change even after he traveled there.
An example of one of the states that Steinbeck traveled to was Texas.
Hey, Paige! What are the traits of people in Texas?
Well, Sammy! Unity was a common trait of people in Texas. Steinbeck portrays that the people of Texas were accepting of others from there, but were a bit arrogant when it comes to associating with outsiders. However, he explains this arrogance in a quote from page 228, which says,
"Outside their state, I think Texans are a little frightened and very tender in their feelings, and these qualities cause boasting arrogance and noisy complacency, the outlets of shy children."
The people of Texas may be unified, but the weather is definitely not. It's much colder up north in the Panhandle, but very warm down south. We know this because Steinbeck says, "What I am trying to say is that there is no physical or geographical unity in Texas." This is located on page 233.
Another broad trait of the people from Texas was extreme self-confidence. Steinbeck used the young doctor who helped Charley to exhibit this trait. The positive attitude of the doctor was just one of many that Steinbeck encountered in Texas.
On page 235, Steinbeck said, "He was content and confident, and so was I," referring to the doctor.
Charley's failing health may have been a symbol of Steinbeck's negative view of Texas.
Hey, Sammy, could you do me a favor and describe the setting of Texas in Steinbeck's point of view?
Well, of course, Lindsay. The Thanksgiving get-together with Steinbeck's friends from Texas was a major depiction of a common setting.
He describes it as a beautiful ranch, rich in water and trees and grazing land. Everywhere, bulldozers had pushed earth dams to hold back the water, making a series of life-giving lakes down the center of the ranch. Oh, well-grazed flats and the blooded Herefords grazed, only looking up as we drove by in a cloud of dust. This quote is from page 236. This quote is one of many examples of imagery that Steinbeck uses in this book.
The tone Steinbeck uses throughout this section is appreciated in some ways and criticizing in others.
Steinbeck was appreciative at the fact that Texans were kind and welcoming towards other Texans, yet Steinbeck criticized that they weren't the same way towards outsiders.
The people who lived in the ranch were one example of a lifestyle that was usually present throughout Texas.
After traveling to Texas, Steinbeck made his way into Louisiana.
Steinbeck was especially not looking forward to traveling here because he heard of all the violence and racism in this area.
Here is a quote from Steinbeck. "I am not drawn to pain and violence. Here I knew were pain and confusion and all the manic reasons of bewilderment and fear." This is from page 245.
He uses various examples to prove his point at several parts of the book.
Steinbeck uses the hitchhiker as an example to portray these traits.
Steinbeck used the cheerleaders to discuss how badly racism had become. He referred to the behavior as a show.
Steinbeck refused to write down exactly what the cheerleaders said because of how offensive and obscene their words were.
However, he did describe it by using this quote. "This strange drama seemed so improbable that I felt I had to see it. It had the same draws of five-legged calf or two-headed fetus at a sideshow. A distortion of normal life we have always found so interesting that we will pay to see it, perhaps to prove to ourselves that we have the proper number of legs or heads." Page 249 through 250.
One of the things that astounded Steinbeck the most was the fact that the police, the people who were supposed to be neutral about the cheerleader situation, proved they were not through their actions.
Steinbeck described the setting of Louisiana as very noisy and busy. He talked of the many restaurants and other stores that he didn't get to travel to because of his strong feeling of wanting to leave.
The tone of Louisiana was very emotional and somewhat upsetting.
You get this idea because Steinbeck said on page 268, "I wanted to get away." A cowardly attitude, perhaps, but more cowardly to deny.
During his description of the South, Steinbeck used many literary devices such as similes or metaphors. One example Steinbeck used was found on page 257, speaking about the little girl going to school. The little girl did not look at the howling crowd, but from the side the whites of her eyes showed like those of a frightened fawn.